This is a beautiful king walk from Gukesh D, the current world champion, Pentala Hari Krishna, his opponent, another Indian player, and a second of Gukesh, does not know what hit him. This is Tata steel chess, round 7. We're diving into this great game in a minute, and of course, just before we do, it's that time of day, day 3 of my 10-day challenge, Magic Mind, productivity shot, 1 moment. We're banging it down each day. If you need that 5% little boost, extra productivity, get stuff done right down the to-do list, then give this one a go. It's never going to replace good sleep, right? Exercise, diet, reducing stress, they're all about that, but this could be that little tiny extra to nudge you over, get you on track with that to-do list productivity here. If you want to check it out, look at the link in the description. Magicmind.com/epicjan, really great stuff, and you get the sleep elixir all in a bundle, 45% off. Check it out. Now we're diving in. Who's got white? It's Gukesh. E4 best by test. We get the La France variation. Pentala whispers on guard. D4 takes the center, D5, and we get the advanced variation. Now C5, and after C3, look at that from Gukesh D. He gets a connect 4 already, unlocks himself a kung fu lesson with the one and only Hans Niemann. What a lucky guy. We get knight C6, knight F3, and these are some of the common moves for black. We see bishop D7 selected, and after bishop E2, we get the smelly looking knight G to E7. But let's remember, it couldn't come here, so it makes sense it's blocking the bishop, and after castles, an exchange of prisoners in the center, now we see where the knight's headed, pouring some pressure onto that central pawn. Knight C3 played, this is covered for now, but there's something coming. A6, King H1, prophylactic chess. That means to guard against something before it happens, aka a nasty check in future. We get Rook C8 hitting the open file, Rook B1 preparing to push P, interesting move, and now Queen B6 forces a crisis point. How are you going to defend this pawn? You know, if bishop e3, then maybe you're giving up your bishop pair. Well, Gukesh here comes up with an awesome solution, cooked up at home, right? What does he do? He plows forth with Gary the G-pawn. Andrea starts spinning the beats. We absolutely love it. And we've got to ask ourselves the question, what if you take this pawn? You know, that's what you're being encouraged to do. 3 attackers, only 2 defenders. Well, now you pin and win, baby, and it's just game over, basically. You're about to lose that piece or lose your queen if you move it. And if you try bishop c5, you run into knight a4, go to fork Vegas. It's just game over. So let's run it back. You can't take here, but there is an exceptional move. You can take with this knight. Where does that come from? Because if you take here, I mean, what's your big point now? Well, you can take here, bishop takes, and now look at this, smash. You take that one off the board, and of course after pawn captures, you lose this on b1. So actually taking isn't the best move. Bishop e3 is, hitting the queen, connecting these ones, but then you take off once more. Pawn takes, queen takes. Black isn't exchanged down, but with serious play, bishop pair, pawns under fire, you know, it's a roughly equal position, even possibly an edge to black. So that was a very interesting way to go, but not played. The knight backpedals faster than my hairline here, and Gukesh now gains an initiative with bishop e3. We get h5 trying to regain this square, so the pawn pushes on, and now you should go pawn g6 or knight g6, but we get knife f5, and now watch this. What does Gukesh do? Takes the bull by the horns by smashing forward with that pawn, and you've got big problems. If you take, not played in the game, the problem is you leave yourself with this structure that only a mother could love. Rook g1's on the way, bishop d3. It's just a long-term nasty position. So that's why we see the move of f6 equally stinky.
Mushrooms.
Makes Lord Hans Feingold wince to weaken the king, but it was the lesser of two evils. We see takes, pawn recaptures, bishop d3, not the most precise, but leaves white with a steady advantage. This knight now drops back to e7, hits the pawn, opens the eyes of the rook and bishop, let's not forget as well, and after rook g1 covering the pawn, we see bishop g7 preparing to get that king out of dodge here. Now knight a4 hits the queen, and queen b4 is best, stays more active and stops b4 for the time being. However, queen d6 played, also really natural, but now you can land knight c5 in a great circumstance, or go b4, not as good because now b6 gets played, but I never actually looked at a line here and I need to check it out. I was going to say now you can push forward and gain great space because that's what was played in the game, but I suddenly see that a pawn is hanging. Why couldn't you take that one? Hit the rook. Gukesh didn't do this. Well, it seems rook a8 is strong. You could also start by taking here. Okay, and if b5, you're kind of locking your own bishop out of the game. Right, now I understand it. This one looks a bit in jail. Suddenly you've trapped it in. And of course, if you move it back, well, now you've got problems here. You're losing a whole piece. Fine, you give black activity you don't want to give. So b5 was played. Great move. Capture's played. Bishop takes back. These ones are exchanged. Now we see takes on e3 after this liquidation on b5. And after rook c6, defending the b6 pawn, Gukesh brings out the queen to intensify the pressure. How do you cover this one? Answer, you don't. So castles is played. It collapses off the board, but bishop h6 now desperately looks for counterplay against the backwards e-pawn. We see knight a4, not the most precise, but still not bad. Spinning around, we're going to crack on with the game here. Knight f5, great move, but Gukesh doesn't respond to the attack on the pawn, you know, something a bit passive like rook e1. He plays rook c5, and he sets a cunning trap. You know, if you take here with either piece, let's say this one, to hit the rook, well, now there's the awesome queen b7, and look at the power of the pawn on g6. Not only are you threatening to pick up a piece here, but if black sort of takes on c5, let's say, you actually shut the trap with a checkmate. What an attacking force this is. Amazing lines. So you can't touch this pawn. That's why we see the move of takes on c5, but it's really not the best. Bringing the rooks to double, something like that, much better, because now after knight takes here, the white pieces are flowing into the attack and this pawn is immune. However, we don't see it not touched. Pentala picks up his knight here and takes that pawn. Very bad move. He should have taken with the bishop if you're going to capture it, because you hit the rook, and if queen b7, threatening the mate, because the knight's still on f5, you can go queen e7, block the file. If takes, this is one of the best lines, then this is how it can go, something like this. You bounce it back, support this one, pressure the center, different game. Yes, you can do this, but black gets activity. Okay, we run back because we see the move of knight takes on e3, and that is a miscalculation. It's like going on vacation in Fabi's Fro and forgetting your anti-itch pants, because the problem now is when queen b7 comes, you haven't got the queen e7 resource that we just talked about. Therefore, bishop g7 needs to be played. My mic just collapsed a bit. Hopefully that doesn't sound too weird and the audio is not terrible. And after bishop g7, although you block the mate here, rook e1, the knight's having to retreat, and the collapse of the e6 pawn spells danger. Because after rook b8, no time to Botez gambit, we now see Gukesh check, king h8, and he's got a plethora of amazing moves. He keeps it simple with this. Knight recaptures and rook e7 creates this massive paralysis. You know, you can't move the knight or you get mated here. So the rook comes across the cover, but now you can just slowly improve the white pieces. Black's in a huge bind. We get rook d7 played. Don't try and exchange the queens. This is a nice way to lose. What a checkmate that would be. Hemmed in by your own rook. So instead the queen comes to b6, getting ready to check. We see rook takes on d5, and not just for the sake of grabbing a pawn, but you're threatening to take with check. knight takes, and then you checkmate with the queen. So that's why we see the check, and this is the moment we get one of the most legendary king walks we've seen in a while. It steps to g2, still as a threat to take the pawn on h5. So f5 intercepts the attack. Now rook c5 covers some key squares, opens up the queen's defense on a2. So the check is played from here. We get a couple of shuffly moves, and now here we go. It gets its running shoes on, and king g3 is played. Loved this because after h4 check, Gukesh is not lulled into taking that pawn. This would be doom for the white player, because then you get queen f2 check, and it's not even about picking up the knight. You can't go here because of the pawn, but after king g5 you can check from e3, and suddenly you're snaking that king all the way up the board. Knight e8 check, and you're having to give up the king, or take on f5, which is equally horrendous. You pick up the queen here after this fork. So no takes played, king f4 instead. You can't check from here, they're nicely covered, so that's why the queen checks from b8. But now the king steps to g5. No, it doesn't. I'm telling lies, sorry. Rook e5 blocks the way. Then we get queen d6 after a huge think. Pentala's ready to resign here, because after king g5, he does indeed throw in the towel. Now, why does he do it? We'll say you just make some passing move, h3. This king is on the way in. I mean, the same is happening if you check from here. King's on the way in. What's the ultimate point? Well, after these moves, you can go rook e7 now, or you could go knight g5. But how to play? You have to do something. Rook e7 is coming, plus then the queen is going to deliver a mate, or the rook, some kind of thing. If you try and get them off like this, then there's rook e7 here, and you just can't hold it together. Knight moves, you can do this kind of thing, bring in the knight, threaten the mate, so the rook has to give itself up. If the knight doesn't move and you get this kind of thing, okay, then you get the smothered mate. So these are the kind of themes and tactics once the king arrives there. It's just overwhelming pressure on the knight, and you have to exchange the queens and then get mated in a different fashion. So that was a real boa constrictor game by Gukesh. Amazing to watch today. Hope you enjoyed. Check out the link in the description, magicmind.com/epicjan. Awesome bundle deal, 45% off, and have a look at the video on screen for another epic game of chess. Cheers.